So let's take a look at what it's like to configure and use Instant Port in ExtremeCloud IQ to automate your access layer switching. So Instant Port allows you to automatically assign different VLAN types to your switch ports based off of the connected device's advertised capabilities or MAC address. So in this example, I've got a universal switch of 5320 connected to my account and an AP4000 universal access point. This switch is on version 32.6 patch 1-2, which is the minimum version required for Instant Port to be enabled. Now, whenever I click into my network policy, which is going to hold my configuration for my switch, I'm going to jump into my Instant Port profiles, and I have one already created here. Now let's run through what each of the individual items in this configuration look like and do, and how you would set it up yourself. So in this example, I have my name as Instant Port Demo. I didn't give it a description, it's not required. I have my non-forwarding VLAN. So if I wanted an access point, when it gets connected to my switch, to automatically be placed in the correct VLANs, but I didn't want someone to be able to connect their Raspberry Pi or their own laptop or whatever device that I don't recognize on the network to not get any sort of connectivity. That's where the non-forwarding VLAN comes in play. So in this example, we have this non-match action. When a device does not match any of my rules below, it gets dropped into the non-forwarding VLAN. You can change this to use the default port type, which means if a device does not match any of these rules, it's going to use a default port type that you configure. In this example, it's using the access port default port type, which just drops them into VLAN 1, which for my lab, I don't want to do that. I just want everything to either match a rule set or go nowhere. So if it doesn't match a rule set, it's going into that non-forwarding VLAN of 999 where it can't get out to the internet and it can't reach other devices on the network. So let's talk about the rule set below. So in this example, I have two different device types created, a printer and an access point. For the printer, I'm going to use Mac Learning based off of its Mac OUI. So you would configure this to use the OUI and then a wildcard for the rest of it. So the first 6 digits have to match that OUI exactly, and then the last 6 digits of the MAC address don't have to match anything. Which means that if all of my printers came from the same manufacturer, then I'm going to know the OUI of those printers. And if there's multiple, I can add another device type if it's 2 different OUIs. Using that, I can automatically place all of my printers into the correct VLAN without having to manually go through and configure the switch port. And then for my access point, I'm using the LDP capability category of WLAN access point, which is a default object here, to automatically place it into untagged 1, tagged 102030. So that'd be my management VLAN of the AP, and then all of my SSID VLANs. And then whenever I create this, you can look at what a sample device type would look like. Named it access point, I gave it a description in this example, and I'm using the LDP capability dropdown. There's 4 different ones you can use, and clicking on this information icon on the right-hand side will tell you what each one of them is and what they do differently. And then I can choose from these pre-created LDP capability categories on the right. In this example, just WLAN access point, which means whenever a device gets plugged in and my access point is advertising itself to the switch and says, hey, I'm an access point, it's going to automatically get put into the correct VLANs. Your port usage would be access port or trunk, phone and data, and then the VLANs that you want untagged and tagged on the switch port. So I'm going to drop out of there. And then after we create the Instant Port profile, we have to assign it to our switch template. So I'm going to jump into my 5320 template and into its port configuration. Up here at the very top, I have my port profile already selected, my Instant Port demo that we just created. And then down below, I have all of the ports that Instant Port profile is configured for. So it does not have to be enabled on every single port on the switch. So if you wanted something like your trunk port to be something different and not use Instant Port profile, you can manually assign it there. Or if you didn't want it on certain ports. In this example, I have it on port 1 through 12, which means any device plugged into 1 through 12 will be run against the Instant Port rule set. And that's pretty much all you have to do to get it configured for a switch. The next thing you would do is deploy the policy and upload it to the switch. So now I have instant port configured and it's running on my 5320, my universal switch. Now if I want to validate that it's running on this switch, I can click into its hostname. On the right hand side, you're going to see the different devices connected. I have things connected on 1, 3, and 7. And I can see that port 1, I have my access point connected. It's automatically getting assigned its VLANs. On port 3, I have a printer getting assigned VLAN 1. And then on port 7, I have a device that doesn't match any of my rules, getting dropped into the non-forwarding VLAN. Now I can jump into my client view just to verify some of these devices. On port 1, I have my access point, my AP4000. On port 3, I have a printer. It's not advertising LODP, but it is matching my instant port profile for a printer, and I can verify that its Mac GUI is correct based on the rule set. And then see what switch it's connected to, and then the port number from here. And then for this device that didn't match any of my rules, I can see no match profile here, and this is a Raspberry Pi. So obviously I don't want a Raspberry Pi connecting to my network. It's not matching any of my rules and getting dropped automatically into VLAN 999, and it's not getting an IP address. So it has no layer 3 connectivity, can't reach other devices on the network, and can't get out to the internet. So in this example, if someone plugged this Raspberry Pi into my switch, I don't have to worry about it having internet access or access to other devices on the network. Because it's not matching any of my rules, it's staying in this non-forwarding VLAN.